What's up? So this is going to be my first album review on this channel. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. I'm currently in the process of making like 5 more of these, so I hope to have these coming out regularly, hopefully. But the band that has the honor of being my first review is Seder with their latest release, Totem. So Totem is their second full-length record. Seder has done an EP called Neutrino, and their first full-length record was called Locus. I thought both Neutrino and Locus were really great records, but naturally Locus was kind of an improvement over Neutrino, and I was very excited for this record. So when the first single came out, Vector off the album, right off the bat I was hooked. In an interview about the album, Michael said that it was the most songy song, and I think that's like a great description for it. It doesn't mean to say that the track is too simple. It's actually one of my favorites on the album. I think it starts off with one of my favorite chord progressions on the album. At about 20 seconds in, the vocalist comes in with this fantastic melody and some really cool lyrics. Cauterize my deformed overture, covet elevation, restart my potential, myopic aggravation. That's pretty interesting. There's a great transition to this, I guess, chorus type thing at around 41 seconds in. There's this cool guitar part at about 2 minutes and 2 seconds that I overlooked for a while. There's this cool lead part playing. It's under the screams, which come in for the first time at this point. There's kind of this really awesome build section from here going into about 3:06, and the vocalist just goes into the stratosphere here. And you get this really satisfying melodic breakdown with some really cool chords, and then about 20 seconds later it goes into this super heavy breakdown to kind of close out the song. Really cool movements in the song here. There's definitely not a part of this song that's boring to me. Their second single came out called Attrition. The beginning of Attrition gets you really pumped about where it's gonna go. You get this cool guitar lead part and then some chugs to follow it up, and you kind of hear that guitar part in different ways throughout the entire song. It kind of permeates through the whole track. At about a minute in, there's this really cool thing where you hear that same pattern, and when the lead part is playing, you hear the clean vocals, and then the screams come in during the chuggy part, and there's this cool like back and forth right then. At about 1:58, there's this crazy cool quick transition. To me it also seems like the song's been playing up to now, and then you just hear like a disc scratch, and then the DJ plays just another completely different song here. There's this really cool breakdown section here, and the guitars are moving up a scale to the rhythm. It kind of reminds me of that one part in Apogee from the Locust record. When I was writing my notes here, I totally butchered the word breakdown and typed the word breadwon. So if this video gets released under the name breadwon, you'll know the lore behind it. At around 2 minutes and 17 seconds, you get this really cool vocal section. I almost want to like move my hands in this kind of like really cringy motion to JD's track. And then you have these background like oh sounds from Michael, really cool. There's a great level of energy through the rest of the song. I feel it just kind of ended abruptly. I don't think songs necessarily have to like fade out or just end on like a ringing note, but the ending of this song just kind of definitely caught me off guard, but I guess that fits the Seder style. And then you have the final single before the album release, which was Whelmed. There's a crazy breakdown intro that's very fun to headbang to. It's very fast paced. So I think this song really highlighted the guy who recorded, mixed, and mastered the album, which is Corey Bautista. This beginning breakdown part just sounds so crisp and clean. He's very talented at making everything sound perfect. There's this part at like 59 seconds where the singer says the word conviction, and the vocal line is like this really weird lift up. He kind of like goes up in these notes in just a very odd way. I don't really know how to describe it. There's a cool little like moment rest at about 1:33, and then it just jumps back into the song again. At 1:52, JD holds this fantastic note, and you hear this crazy wheedly guitar stuff in the background. It's really awesome together. And then at 2:21, the song transitions into this like relaxed 3/4 section. So I think the highlight of this album compared to Locust, that I'll talk more about as we go on, is the that this album has parts where they tone it down a bit and get kind of softer, where Locust just felt like front to back, non-stop, loud math, except for maybe that one part in Levitator. And it was a fantastic record, but when you listen to Totem front to back, it kind of gives you the impression that you're on like this journey. That's something really cool that I look for. So this third and final single just kind of gave me the impression that like, whoa, they're actually gonna like back up and chill for a second here. I think this is going to help the band at live shows. When I saw the album release show for the album Locust, they played the song, I think it was Pathing, and at the end of the song, Michael just went up to the mic and said, "Whoa, that's a hard one to play," or something like that. Because you gotta remember, these guys are playing and singing at the same time. So this makes me think that at a live show, if they play this song, when this section comes in and everything like tones down a little bit, the band can actually take a step back and enjoy it for a moment. That applies mainly instrumentally, because JD is doing some pretty cool vocal notes here that are pretty hard to hold on to for a long time. But this is only until 3:59 when the band goes back into blast beats and some crazy weedly deedly stuff in the background. Breaks over, guys. And then at the end we kind of get this background beat and synth, again another part of the album that just takes a sec so that the listener can go, wow, that was crazy, let's just take a moment before we keep going. Definitely one of the most ambitious tracks on here, and something we didn't really hear as much of in the first record. So the album came out July 1st, and the first track on the record was Seam, a great way to start off the album. Right off the bat we get this count in and JD just hits us with a great melody and cool guitar in the background. There's this awesome breakdown at about 2:07 that I totally wasn't expecting, but totally love that it's there now. So there's not like a huge build into it, but when it's happening, it kind of reminds me of, this might sound weird, August Burns Red's Invisible Enemy. Definitely kind of got that vibe from this section. I can really feel the screams here, and I can tell that both of these vocalists' ranges are even more amazing on this record than they already were. And the last 10 seconds of the song have a crazy fun mathy ending that kind of reminds me more of Locust. So then Whelmed and Vector play next on the album. That's a great spot on the album for those two tracks. When I listen to an album, I care a lot about the art behind it and like where you place the tracks and what those tracks are called and the album artwork that goes with it all. Just the culmination of all those things adds to like the full experience of listening to an album front to back for me. So I think having the first 3 songs in this order was a great place for them and has this nice flow. And then we get to Bloom. Bloom is a really nice track. It starts off in a much different way than the usual Seder stuff. It just comes right in with this nice muted chord progression at like 190 BPM or so, and then just immediately drops into this really satisfying, open, fun sounding breakdown. I think the vocal melody that comes in at about 55 seconds is one of my favorite vocal melodies on the entire album. Musically, actually, I think the guitar and the vocals complement each other best in Bloom. When the clean vocals come in again at about 2:08, I think these are some of the best lyrics on the entire record. Rearrange what I believe, cleansing my demonic fascination with this actuality. Suppression never found it so responsible as I stimulate devastation using my own investment. Whoa. At 3:17, the cleans and the screams layer over each other. Very cool. When this album came out, I actually listened to Bloom the least out of any track. Not to say it was bad by any means. I guess it's just the other tracks spoke to me more initially. This is why I feel you should really review an album like at least a week or so after it releases. So I thought it was interesting how Bloom sort of bloomed into one of my favorite tracks. That was terrible. And then we go into Lull. I mean, wow. So remember when I said earlier that I think this record introduced more dynamics into the Seder sound? This is the track that really drives that home. Lull is an almost 2-minute long instrumental track with no drums, and is literally one of my favorite songs of the year in the genre of classical music. The guitar composition is absolutely superb here, and pretty early on you get this cello in the background. If you don't know, the cello is supplied by Corey, the guy that recorded the album. He actually recorded some cello parts for my band's EP that we released a few years ago. So I'm going to assume that all of the strings that you hear in this track are supplied by Corey, minus the clean clean guitar, I think. But oh man, these strings with this beautiful clean guitar that has a great tone, by the way, just sends you into space halfway through. Almost makes you want to cry, seriously. I think this one is just 2 minutes of pure blissful, relaxed euphoria. And definitely a first for Seder, and I have to say, I hope they do more of this in the future. I think it's a very tasty treat halfway through the album. So Lull is kind of the transition into track 6 on the album, Haven. And if I'm being honest, the day this album first came out, Haven was definitely my favorite song on the whole record. I'm not sure which song has that title now, maybe Bloom, but there's a lot of songs on the album that are just like so close to each other, it's hard to tell. It definitely has some of my favorite lyrics. It's the longest song on the record, almost 7 minutes long. Essentially, I don't care how long a song is, as long as it has a reason to be that long. Then you have something like Inagata Davida by Iron Butterfly, which is 17 minutes long, but could have just as easily been a 4-minute song. So yeah, Haven is constantly changing and always doing something new. But this is Seder we're talking about here. There's this very metalcore breakdown that comes in at about 3:47 too. And it starts in this 16th note feeling, and then it goes into a sextuplet vibe. Definitely getting a little August Burns Red on me. I don't know why that's the comparison I keep making. It's just what it feels like to me, I guess. At 5:11 we get another transition, and you start to hear this really cool tapping lead part in the background. I love that part. The final note of this song is a really beautiful note to end on. And then after that we get this beautiful little piano tune that kind of gets you ready for the next track. To me it seems as kind of like the closure of that classical music part of the album. Like, okay, that's the end of that chapter. Let's get ready for the next one. So then Attrition plays after Haven, also a great placement for that song. I have a feeling that Attrition is gonna make people go nuts live. Like if you're watching this band and then you hear that guitar part start and the room will just get really excited. I can see it now. So then we have Dogma, not technically a single from the album, but we did get a music video for it, I think only 4 days after the album released. Which means we already had 4 music videos for this album less than a week after it came out. So the amount of content coming out alongside the album release is really cool. I had to look this up because I was like, what the hell is a dogma? If I'm even pronouncing that right, that is, but it turns out a dogma is a belief or set of beliefs that is accepted by a group without question. So it's basically blindly following something. This could be relating to religion or philosophy or politics. So it's a very interesting title and radical lyrics here, especially the last phrase. Irrelevant attempted heroic extraction of my lost soul. It's under control. Opulent attention elsewhere propagated towards my self-accord. So Dogma kind of starts out as the triplet song of the album. At about 54 seconds, we get this really cool open section. It's very nice to listen to. I think this song is pretty easy to jump into, and it's a little easier to bob your head to it by and large compared to other songs on the album. It's almost got this uplifting sound despite the narrator's soul being lost. And then to close out the album, we have Sella and the title track Totem. Again, what is a Sella? So I was actually intrigued to find out that Sella is a word, but its meaning is kind of unknown. It's apparently a word that appears 74 times in the Hebrew Bible, and it occurs at the end of a verse, and people assume that it's some sort of musical direction. This is cool. My boys over at Wikipedia says it probably means something like stop and listen. So I'm not sure what the idea behind giving the track this name was, but oddly enough, I feel like that definition of the word fits perfectly into my views on the album. Because since I like that there are parts of this album that are softer, Sella being one of those songs, you can just quote unquote stop and listen or like take a breather during this track. I don't know, maybe that's far-fetched, not sure. Sella is kind of the transition song between Dogma and Totem, but where Lull is kind of like the intro to Haven, Sella is more like the outro to Dogma. This time though, it's totally electronic, just with some ambient guitar sounds in the background underneath this really cool synth part. It's really cool, easy on the ears. And then we go into Totem, and it's got a really heavy opener. I think this is where the screams really shine in this track. What I've really noticed in Totem is how much the low screams are coming out here. Back in Neutrino, there's a lot of high screams, but now the range is so huge here. This track is also a little longer. It's only like 25-ish seconds shy of beating Haven. So I guess if you don't include the piano outro to Haven, they're both like equal length. Despite this being the title track and the last song on the album, which the closer is usually a big deal for me, I think I listened to this one the least out of everything on the album as of now. I guess the style of this track is noticeably different than the others for me. There's some very ominous vocal parts and melodies in this one towards the end, so I definitely find it as one of the most interesting tracks on the album. Lyrically though, it's a fantastic closer. The last two lines are "Command, abandoned entrapment of my thoughts, still on the search for what I've got left." That's a really, really cool lyric to end on. For me, sometimes it's hard to tell exactly what some of Seder's songs are about. I'm sure you can watch their interviews and find that information for some of their songs, but a lot of the time the lyrics are just these very poetic statements with some extensive vocabulary. Usually it seems that these narratives are told from the first person. There's a lot of my this and I've got that. So it feels like a lot of these songs can be an attempt to describe the very complex feelings and beliefs that oneself could be trying to comprehend. Maybe? That kind of seems like what it is for me, at least. Maybe some of these songs are about overthinking huge concepts or trying to understand different types of relationships through anxiety. The list could go on forever, though. So that closes out Totem. In my opinion, this was a step up in just about every way from Locus. Basically, to me, Locus was fantastic, but it didn't really matter if you listened to it front to back or just kind of shuffled all the songs on the album. It wouldn't really change the overall experience, I think. That's where I feel that Totem really takes an amazing step forward. It knows when to be loud, when to be soft, when to be fast, when to be slower. Also, mad props to these three musicians because I feel like I haven't even addressed the elephant in the room yet. These songs are very complex and almost always very difficult to play. The singing and screaming is obviously very talented, and they're also doing it while playing these insane guitar parts. And the drummer Brody, as we all know, is just a phenomenal drummer. He's about to tour with Invent Animate, so kudos. All in all, a fantastic piece of work. I naturally expect bands to get better with every release, and obviously Totem is no exception. And obviously this is a very niche genre of music that I know not everybody will prefer, but you cannot deny the skill and the musicianship that Seder has. So just so you guys know, I'm not doing the whole on a scale of 1 to 10 grading system. And I think a lot of people will just look up a review of something and see the number and base their entire opinion on that score. So anyway, I plan to be doing a lot of these album reviews, so like and subscribe and do the notification thing, all that cool stuff. If you have a suggestion for an album for me to review, leave it in the comments. And until next time, see you guys.